Hey guys, it's the Nerdy Movie Guy. So, I've just recently had the chance to watch Madam Web, and I'm seeing a lot of, let's just say, controversial opinions on the internet. A lot of them are valid, some aren't. There's just a lot of hate going around, so I'm gonna sort of settle the debate of whether or not it deserves hate or whether it's just flat out boring. Short answer, I think it's just somewhere in between. I think there's a lot of elements that I just struggled to connect to really any part of it. Well, at the same time, there's certain movies that may have opinions or agendas. Those sorts of concepts weren't forced in your face in this movie like others. So, from that standpoint, this movie was actually a little bit tame as far as those sort of elements that I thought might be in this kind of a movie. So, I'm seeing a lot of people are saying that this is the worst movie they've ever seen. So, let's take a look at some of the worst movies that I've seen and let's compare it. So first of all, we got Morbius. So I do have the lenticular cover, which is kind of neat. It's a neat physical collection, but why I bought it, I don't know. Don't ask. Let's compare this and Madam Web. Morbius fought people, so there are fight scenes. All right, so that's one comparison. There are fight scenes in Morbius. Madam Web did not have any, not really. All right, so that's 1 point for Morbius. Let's take a look at another one. Here's one of my favorites. Green Lantern. All right, so we got Ryan Reynolds here as Green Lantern. Does Green Lantern gain any points? He does. Here's what he gets. He has his own costume. And check that out. He has his own suit, and he fights in the suit. And spoiler alert, he fights in the suit for more than 20 seconds. So he does get 1 point. All right, that's Green Lantern. Now let's take a look at The Last Jedi. Does this have any points? This movie has a pretty neat cinematography, not gonna lie. So it does have 1 point of something it did better than Madam Web. Alright, so those are some of the worst movies in my opinion that I've seen. So the thing with Madam Web is I think it tried so hard to tease that it was going to connect to something. It just never did. So my first expectation going into this movie is the internet suggested that this movie would connect to one of our live-action Peter Parkers. I didn't know if it was going to. My expectation is it would connect to Venom and or Morbius. It did not. It can connect to either one. There was no mention. There was nothing that I saw that connected it to any of those now 3 movies with Venom, Venom 2, and Morbius. So it did not connect to Sony's own fill-in verse, whatever they're going to call it. Now we move on to Peter Parker. It did not connect to any live-action Peter Parker. Not really. I think the studio left it open where they might want to connect it to Tom Holland's Peter Parker, even though realistically it shouldn't. So this movie does take place in 2003. So in Captain America Civil War, Peter Parker claims he is 15 years old, which would have been 2016. So if Tom Holland's Peter Parker is the one born in 2003 in Madam Web, he would be 13 and not 16. So if they're going to try to pass this off as Tom Holland's Earth, the main MCU, I think this is just a careless mistake, or it's not meant to be connected to Peter Parker at all, or the ones we know. So here's the thing. If it doesn't want to connect to Peter Parker and doesn't want to connect to an established universe, I think what this movie could have been is when I think of Spider-Woman, it's basically you're going to have superhero fans who are females are going to have a Spider-Woman to look up to, whether or not it's children, whether it's adults, whether it's people looking for inspiration. I think this was a perfect opportunity for people who saw Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man back in the day, and they have kids now. Maybe they have little girls. Now this is something that they can connect to as they connected to Spider-Man before. I thought that was an element that this release could have had. It did not. The thing with this movie, the first complaint that I have, that's in my opinion a valid one because the trailer, I think, gave a wrong impression of what this movie could have been. So in this movie, the climax part in the trailer is we see 3 Spider-Women in their suits, sort of fighting. And In this movie, spoiler alert, they have maybe 30 seconds of screen time in their suits. Maybe. Total in the whole movie. They don't get their powers in this storyline. When they have their suits, it's in some strange future scene that doesn't even really happen. So they don't have their powers, they don't have suits. So there's no fighting. There's no Spider-Woman fighting anyone. And so the trailer pitting Spider-Woman versus the Spider-Man guy, whoever Ezekiel Sims' costume persona is supposed to be, the trailer made it seem that there was going to be a fight, and there just never really, it never happened. So that's one complaint, is I think the trailers gave the wrong impression as to what fans can look forward to in this movie. So going back to when I say teases that never happened, in this movie we get Ben Parker, and he talks about he met someone, but he doesn't say who, and we never see May Parker. And then we get Spider-Man's mother. Emma Roberts plays Spider-Man's mother. She's pregnant in this movie, but we never see his father. We don't know who it is. We don't know where he is. When she's giving birth, it's just her and Ben Parker there. So we're missing half the family, really. And I think if it wasn't going to connect to an already established live-action Peter Parker, why can't this movie have a May Parker? Why can't it have Peter Parker's father? So I don't know why they didn't just include those characters if it wasn't supposed to connect to an already established movie anyway. The next thing that I thought was a little bit confusing is the Spider-Women, their characters were just sort of irresponsible teenagers. And that's sort of the impression you get at first. And as you're going through the movie, you think, okay, they're going to grow as a team and as people. But they never really do. They just sort of stay irresponsible. And going back to what I said, where maybe fans who saw Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man have children now, these Spider-Women, these characters really aren't characters that are really hero-worthy right now. They're no one to look up to, no one for kids to look up to. So I think the whole purpose of being a superhero, and I think the whole meaning of Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, that whole concept is just taken out of this movie, and it's just non-existent. And there's nothing for fans to connect with, nothing to look up to, nothing to be inspired by. So I think that really hurt a lot of the movies, not having someone to really connect with at all. Madame Web, her story, she gets a decent plot, but as it progresses, it's just super slow. And what I mean by that is Ezekiel Sims is going after Spider-Woman because he sees in the future that they're supposed to kill him. That's the only 20 seconds we see them in their suit, really. There's one other scene, but it's like 5 seconds. And so he's going after them. So most of this movie is Cassandra Webb and these 3 Spider-Women. They're just sort of on the run from Ezekiel Sims. They don't ever confront him. They don't fight. When they do, it lasts a couple seconds. There's no choreography or fight between really any of the characters in this movie. It's just sort of them running away. Now, the thing with Cassandra Webb is she can see the future. She sees alternate versions of what could happen. So when she sees certain altercations of if they come in contact with him again, by the end of the movie, in the last 20 minutes, we finally get to see the story pick up. She finally hones her skills, knows how to use them, and is able to ultimately overcome Ezekiel Sims by seeing what could happen if she did this, which would cause this. And it was cleverly done. This was probably the only good part about the movie, was the last 20 minutes, the way the confrontation was sort of thought out from a filming standpoint. So that's really the only positive I have. I think this movie falls into the same category as Thor, Love and Thunder and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I think the comedy is just really cringy. I couldn't find any of the jokes funny. Now, when it comes to comedy, it's not for everyone. Different people have very different, tolerances for different types of comedy. So not every kind of comedy is going to be for everyone, but in a movie like this, when it's a superhero movie, a genre that's already sort of fatigued by Sony, a company that's already a little bit fatigued with Venom and Morbius, you would think that they would at least put some effort into actually making it funny, and the fact that it just wasn't was just another detriment to the movie as a whole. In movies where maybe the plot isn't really going anywhere, or the CGI is bad, if it's funny as hell, then at least that's a positive. this movie just wasn't. So this movie failed to pick any kind of element that could carry it at all, because the plot was very generic. The comedy was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. And when it comes to special effects and CGI, there just wasn't a lot of CGI scenes, since a lot of it was just for women running away. So there wasn't a lot of chance or purpose for a large CGI budget. And it shows. So there just wasn't any need for that in this movie because of the way the plot was. So overall, I think a superhero movie, the way superheroes used to be, the way Superman used to be, or Spider-Man used to be, is they're supposed to be someone that children, or really anyone, can look up to and strive to be like. This movie just didn't have that element at all. It didn't have an entertaining element. It didn't have a cohesive element. It didn't connect to anything already established, which it doesn't have to. But if it's just boring, it should connect to something to at least give fans some hype for the next time we see them. If Madam Web 2, the next time we see these characters, it could wait till 2030. I'm not going to care, and I'm not going to wait around for it. I'm just not interested. I'm just not. I think they had a decent cast for this movie, but it's just not enough to carry it. Their script was just so bland to the point where you have Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney, who have both done really well in other projects. They just really didn't have any kind of script to work with in this movie at all. I just think there's just a lot of bad elements that just push this movie down and down and down. And unfortunately, there's just nothing to redeem it. There's nothing to carry it. And there's nothing to propel the hype for these characters or this project into really anything else. So there's a lot of opportunity with this movie. I think they could have a Peter Parker. I think maybe they could create their own story. Maybe Peter Parker is a villain for them. Maybe maybe Peter Parker never becomes Spider-Man. Maybe this is a world where Miles Morales becomes the one and only Spider-Man, instead of taking over for Peter like before. So I think this movie does leave a lot open. The thing is, all those plots that are left open, they just have to actually do it. And this movie just didn't take any chances with the plot or the story at all. So overall, I just found myself extremely bored watching this movie. Like I said, there's just not really any exciting or interesting elements that gives me any hype for the next one. But it's Sony. They're going to keep making Spider-Man spin-offs. I thought when they were doing Spider-Man spin-offs that we would see Spider-Man in something. But with their own universe they're creating, we're 4 movies in. There's no Peter Parker. So I don't know what's going to happen, guys. I don't know where Madam Web's going to show up next. I don't know where the Sonyverse is showing up next. You just watch Venom, you watch Morbius, you watch Madam Web, and you just wonder, since they're all Sony movies, how is Spider-Verse 100 times better? Both of them. I couldn't believe that that's Sony. The quality is just so incomparable. So, anyway, there's a lot of reviews from Madam Web. Some good, some bad. Thank you guys for sticking with me watching my review. Overall, did I hate the movie? I didn't hate it. Overall, was it the worst movie I've ever seen? No, it was just extremely boring. That's just it. If I had to sum it up in one word, it's just boring. That's all. So thanks again for watching. I look forward to reviewing more and more movies, and I look forward to seeing where the Sonyverse might go. But if it goes nowhere, which is what I expect, I do look forward to the next Spider-Verse 3. So thanks again, everyone. Keep it digging.